sessions so far on Instagram, Facebook, but this is our first live, and we have a very special guest with us, Prashant, who is an entrepreneur himself, and he's but yes, that's the great part. But the greater part is he is the father to a 11-year-old open learner. So he's kind of closely watched his own son's open learning journey, and in that process also seen his journey evolve as an open learner himself. Before we dive into the conversation with Prashant, let me give you a quick synopsis of what Coversity is. We've been talking about, so many articles on our LinkedIn profile, and sharing some thoughts from our end. Let me give you a gist of what this whole concept is. So Coversity is a dedicated space by Aarohi Open Learning Community, where youth between the age of 14 to 21, they get an opportunity to deep dive and explore and discover their passions, along with a cohort of youngsters, and they do so by doing industry relevant work. So they are working in order to learn, and they're trying out multiple domains if they feel so, and seeing what really can be the profession that they wish to uh, take up. So, having said that, the topic for the day is the future of education is self led. So, we will dive into that, but we also have two very esteemed guests, in my opinion at least. We have Ratnesh, who is the co founder of Aarohi Open Learning Community. And this community started 15 years ago. So, he's been working with children much late about that. So he's been in this space working with children and being a child himself, an open learner himself for all these years. So I'm waiting to hear a lot of pearls of wisdom from him too. And of course, we have Srijani, who is a youth herself, all of 16, helping us build this concept, and sharing her perspective of how what it means for a youngster or a youth to be charting that journey. So she gives us that really nugget of wisdom that we need as adults to kind of help them chart their journey. Okay, so the floor is open. Ratnesh, maybe let's start with you. Something that you want to, open the floor with some thought.
Yeah. Okay. So my whatever journey with Prashant also has been very old, and we have known each other
Yes.
for many years, and we have been kind of collaborating in many different ways. So Prashant, you have been at least listening about Coversity, interacting with some of the youths who are part of Coversity. So what are your top thoughts as this what has unfolded since last June when we started Coversity?
Right. Thanks for having me on this live. Very excited. And I'm very excited about Coversity as an idea, as how it's starting, how it is progressing. Right here we have co-founders from Srijani, 16-year-old, to Ratnesh, who claims to still be 18-year-old. So we have a wide age group of co-founders here, right? So that's great. Just before we started the live, and I was saying that the future is self-led, and this morning when I looked at the LinkedIn caption, it got me thinking about education and future. For the longest time, I was fed as a child that you got to learn, you got to go to school, you have to learn something, get some degrees, because someday, one day, you'll be awesome, right? So there's all this future is green as an advertisement, in the service of which you would kind of suck up all of the stresses that come along with the education. But watching my son, I've been told to introduce my son as a 12-year-old because he's going to be 12 years this month. Having watched my 12-year-old, I've increasingly opened to the idea that education has is more of a present continuous construct. Uh, Learning is present continuous. We kind of pick up something We learn something if it is going to create something of value right now. When I say right now, I don't mean the right now in, in the spiritual sense, now, the moment, the present moment. I don't mean that. What I mean is anything that creates value for the projects, for the aspirations that we have right now. Learning seems to happen automatically if it is in service of those projects. So learning is always a present continuous thing. And for me, that's what appeals a lot about Coversity. Uh, when people get together in the first month of Coversity, they don't sit and say, okay, these are the subjects you're going to learn. There's no syllabus. Uh, you don't publish a syllabus and say, okay, this is what we're going to cover. This is the curriculum we're going to cover. The only thing that is announced is you all show up at the campus and you're going to spend a week dreaming and figuring out what you want to do, what project you want to do, what thing you want to bring into the world, what reality you want to create in the world. And then comes the figuring out what to learn, where to learn it from, who to learn it from, where to work, where do I get the experience, how much money I need. So it's always figuring out what reality has to be created, and then so it's like working backwards. But for the longest time, my education has been learning forwards. You study subjects, and then someday, one day, you'll figure out where to use them. And I think that's very unnatural. Uh, picking out something of value, something that's worth pouring my life into, has to happen first, and everything else will follow. I think that's what really attracts me about Coversity. So it's great. I mean, that's how it's happening. And there's no evidence. When these kids, they show up in Coversity in the first month, there's no evidence that they can accomplish any of the things that they are saying that they'll accomplish, and yet they manage to accomplish it, or at least move in the direction. So that's very human. It's not very mechanical. It's not robotic. It's very human.
So, Prashant, you talked about this learning backwards, where we first think what we want to achieve and then kind of work backwards and see what
Yes.
we need for that. So, you have done so many things in life. Do you see? I'm from a moment resting the children's stories and more coming on to your stories as
Sure.
a doer, achiever in the field of various fields. How do you see these working backwards and learning backwards happening all over, let's say, the film world, the corporate
Yeah.
world, wherever, whichever worlds you have been part of?
Thanks for asking this. 2018, I picked up learning screenwriting just for the sake of it. And why did that happen? I'm not a very hobby person. I didn't have a hobby at all throughout my life. It's the only hobby I had was get good marks, make sure that my parents are not angry with me. Uh, so, but my son, as he's been a part of Aarohi, and he had carpentry for a while, which was a season, and then electronics was a season. So he picks up something and then he enjoys it for a while, and then he drops it, picks up something else, and so on. And somewhere along that line, if open learner ka baap hu, so I also have to be a little bit of an open learner myself. So I figured, I think I should pick something new to learn, because I need to experience what it means to learn something fresh, something brand new, something out of the ordinary. So I'm a software developer. And my brother and I, we were running a small mini theater in Bangalore, and we came in touch with a lot of filmmakers. And there was always this word that is floating around called screenwriting. And at some point, I felt interested to learn what the screenwriting thing is all about. So I just learned screenwriting for the sake of it. But actually, when I look back, the real reason why I learned screenwriting was because I really wanted to understand more about my customers. I wanted to understand, these were filmmakers who would book our venues to show their films. I really wanted to understand what their life looks like, how their creative process looks like. I wanted to understand them. So that was my need. Now, screenwriting was one of the vehicles for me to do that. I could have learned, let's say, photography. I could have learned, shooting with the camera. I could have learned production, but somehow screenwriting appealed to me. And I kept learning it for a while. And then I said, oh, this is an interesting thing. So I would read small stories and try to make screenplays out of them, and imagine stories and write screenplays out of them. I didn't have an agenda to be a filmmaker. I am not a filmmaker still. I don't imagine myself to say, okay, I'm going to write a film and make it. Uh, so there is, it's, I didn't learn screenwriting in order to do something. I learned it simply for the sake of it. There is no in order to here. And how this added up to a wonderful present that I'm enjoying right now is purely by accident. When the pandemic happened, around that time, I was writing a screenplay, and it required me to write a story that was fairly non-linear in structure. And using the existing software tools to write a non-linear screenplay, I was struggling to kind of put together the non-linearness of the story. So I had, I'm a software developer. You have this thing, right? Uh, for anyone who has a hammer, everything is a nail. So for a software developer, everything is a software problem. So there was this idea that I had in mind, if we can write a non-linear composition screenplay software, it would make my life simpler. So I kind of put it together so that it helps me write my stories better. And over the first 3 weeks of the lockdown, I kind of put together an app, and at the end of which, screenwriting was less interesting and the software became a little more interesting. And see, that's the thing about it, right? So if I had said, okay, I'm going to be passionate about screenwriting and I hold on to it so tight, I'm not really open to all the other flavors that will come out of that activity. So this software came out, and I shared it with a few filmmakers who I had built a relationship with because of the mini theater we were running. And one of them encouraged, and he said, hey, you know what, this is an interesting idea. Why don't you add support for writing in local languages? And I said, that seems like a nice idea. So I added support for, all the 11 local languages we have in India. And then we put it out there, and then people liked it, and then more features, and then more. I have a Discord community with, about 1,000 people. We have like 20,000 users using the Scrite app today. And a lot of times I watch movies now, and, every once in a while you see people mentioning, they've used Scrite to write the, the film. So had I learned screenwriting in order to create Scrite, I think it would have been a very turbulent journey, a very turbulent journey. It just happened for the sake of exploring. And then once you open that door, you notice that there are a few more doors. And you're like, oh, it's interesting. So how about I open that door? And then I open that door. And it keeps, expanding. Now I have an extraordinary opportunity of hanging out with film writers. I get a chance to sit and talk to them, discover how the creation process of films, go about. I can write screenplays and request legit filmmakers to review my screenplay, right? I mean, how many people get that opportunity? I can request for screenplays of films that are getting made. I can read them. I get private access to these writers, have an interesting conversation with them. Now, it's also true that Scrite, we're trying to put together a subscription model for the Scrite app because we have a lot of users, and some of our users are asking, hey, I think it'll be great if you get us to pay something for it because it's, there should be a business case around it. So it's going to become a business activity too. And some money will come out of it. But the truly exciting part is to sit alongside the drivers of filmmaking, who are the writers, and watch that entire process. So some of the best filmmakers in our country are using Scrite today. I've had calls with some of the best writers in the country, best directors in the country, not just from Kannada film industry, but also from from Mumbai, from Gujarat, from Tamil Nadu, from outside India as well. And people are really appreciating the new thought process that Scrite brings for screenwriters. It's really amazing when you start learning backwards. You pick up something because it's interesting to you, not because you have attended 4 years of college learning screenwriting, right? You simply pick it up, and then you learn one piece at a time. and the pieces that you end up learning are mostly ones that appeal to you. Something that drives your creative juices, something that drives your energies, and one piece at a time, the story unfolds. And I just love the process, and I see that in my son a lot. For him, what he likes is to make other people laugh, is to get other people to enjoy something, right? So it started off with being, trying to tell jokes, and then now he's having this feeling that films can make people experience emotions. So he wants to make films, but he doesn't like this idea of going out, holding a camera, and all of it. So he learned animation, and he's now picked up a project where he's spending about 45-60 days making an animation film entirely in Blender. Is he a 3D artist, an expert 3D artist? No, but he wants to do it. He wants to learn all of that in the service of creating that film, and he will learn what he needs to learn. So it's for me, having seen so many of these examples, I think it's probably the most natural way to learn something is to learn in the backdrop of a life project. Don't learn a subject and then pick up a life project that matches the subject. Pick up a life project and you will relish the subjects that come along with it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kritika.
Yeah. So, quite a number of times I could hear the phrase figure it out, which is
Yeah.
really the mantra of open learning
Yeah.
or, self directed learning. So, when we say figure it out, it doesn't mean that, the learner is like totally clueless. They do have their roadmaps. But do you want to share some of your thoughts or experiences about what does figuring it out, like when you figure it out as you keep doing, what it does to you, or anything to share along those lines?
Okay. Uh, the word figure it out, it kind of conjures this image of someone pouring through books, doing a truckload of research. I think we are in an age where an entire environment is constructed for the figure it outers, right? uh, so my son, for example, my son wants to make this animation film. Now he goes to YouTube and he says, how do I do this? And he asks, how do I do this? How do I do that? 3 or 4 times. YouTube then starts being his assistant. Every time he opens the YouTube app, there are things that it throws to open some new windows, and then suddenly something opens up. Even before the internet came, how, for instance, if you wanted to buy a yellow car, and then you say, I want to buy a yellow car this year. And I bet from that day onwards, all you see on the roads are yellow cars. So it so happens that the universe seems to be conspiring to give you stuff. So throwing a powerful intention out there provides, in fact, the environment throws enough and more resources at us. And that's how figuring it out actually happens, in my opinion. So you end up meeting people who will help you figure things out. And suddenly, out of the blue, somebody will come. There's stories with other Coversity kids here. I think Srijani will also, attest to this. Like when they are looking for something, suddenly an internship opportunity seems to come along, right? A post on Discord, in Aarohi Discord, saying, "Hey, I'm looking to do this," and suddenly something goes up. I know Srishti wanted to do writing, and she posted that, and then few connections happened, and suddenly she seems to have connections with a lot of writers, a lot of screenwriters, novel writers, all of a sudden. Sometimes If you just state the intention out into the open in your gated community, there will be people in your gated community who can help make that connection. Uh, I don't know whether we, uh, Ratnesh is this big is a big fan of ask, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, the thing that most people don't do is ask,
Yes.
right? So if you just ask, something will show up. Uh, my last year when my son was hugely interested in electronics, he just went about asking, who all wants to do electronics. Right across my house is my neighbor, and I didn't know this. He is one of the folks who uh, participates in organizing an event called India Force. And my son got an opportunity to manage a stall, the electronics stall in that conference. And as a part of that, he met a lot of interesting people, among whom was a 12-year-old who gave a talk in a conference. Now, in that instant, for my son, the possibility of a conference talk opened up. Uh, See, when figuring out is going on, there is much less pressure on us to push him into things that give exposure. Uh, keeps to, seems to keep pulling things. And when pulling happens, they kind of feel this sense of accomplishment, achievement. Hey, I made this happen, which will fuel even more making things happen, which will fuel even more making things happen. And then it just roles one. So that's the reason why I think Coversity is a great concept, because you get a lot of people who dig figuring it out. If you kind of put one person who's figuring it out with 25 people who are syllabus oriented, I don't know whether it would work. I don't know. But if you put you know like 5 people who are figure it outers, uh, that's magical.
That's a new term I'm going back with, figure it outers. Yeah. Okay, Srijani has been quiet and listening to all of us. Maybe I would like to hear some, thoughts from her, or some questions if you have for Prashant.
Yeah, I'm kind of just listening, and I can totally relate to whatever Prashant has been mentioning for the past about the figuring out or you ask for it. I can completely relate it as an open learner and also as a Coversity member. And also that you have mentioned about that when there are a lot of people who are figuring out it come together, and that's it's in fact magical and also fun, and at the same time very serious too. Like we kind of work and also have fun together. It's like we co-create together, we be together, we live together, and we grow together.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think a lot of startups are, that's the story, right? They figured it out along the way, and they end up creating great value. Uh, there isn't too much. There isn't a syllabus for, okay, I want to start this business. No. Is there a university that will help me do this particular business? No. There's generic coaching, there's generic training, there's generic education available, but every learning is figuring it out anyway. Uh, so startups are, have always been figuring it out. So I think it's great to start it at the Coversity, level itself.
So, Prashant, you have been kind of an entrepreneur in many different ways, just going out and doing what you really like doing.
Yeah.
And when these young guys like Srijani want to go out and do things, um, on kind of start doing things on their own, not like meaning the thinking is like an entrepreneur, they can be part of an organization. So I'm not trying to say they need to start a
Sure.
startup, but the thinking and the way of working. So what would you say to them? What, in a way, what would you say to Srijini, who is already kind of figuring it out, a figure outer? So
Yeah.
what would be your kind of some thoughts or mantras or some yarn for them, some guidance for them actually, because
I
you've figured it out in so many different, let's say, domains, I would say.
Yeah. So uh, I really like to kind of reiterate, bold italics, underline one thing that you said. Uh, you don't have to start a business in order to be an entrepreneur. You can be part of an organization and still be an entrepreneur. Now, the definition of this term entrepreneur has changed so many times. 20 years ago when I graduated, it was if you start a business, then you're an entrepreneur. That was at least my understanding. Maybe I was naive, but increasingly the word entrepreneur is more about if you need to start something that's going to scale up and like really quickly, and you need to start something that will allow you to raise funds, make a lot of money, make a big splash, and have your visionary pose in the economic times and all of that. That's what entrepreneurship has suddenly become all about. uh, Leave the definitions aside, right? uh, if there is a life project that calls you, uh, pick a starting point. Whatever is the starting point, that's okay. Pick a starting point and then put something out there in the open. Put the minimum viable product, so to speak. Put something out there in the open, and then watch as people respond to it, and allow the next journey to be determined by that. By planning too far ahead, I think one, we may get overwhelmed. Oh my God, I have to go this far. Uh, So if Ratnesh and Kirtika and Srijani already knew, if there was a time machine and you could travel to 2050 and look at how Coversity is at that time, then you travel back in time and come today, I'm pretty sure all of us will say we are not doing it. It looks like a lot of work, right? Uh, it's always uh, getting unconcealed, one peel at a time. So pick a good starting point, get started, put the minimum viable product out there. So I'll tell you a story from my initial days. Straight after my college, I was my final year project was in computer graphics. And I seem to love that subject a lot. I seem to love the idea of adding visual meaning to abstract data. And whether it's charts, 3D stuff, 3D and 3D visualization. I just love the idea of doing writing software that provides visual meaning to some abstract data. So right after college, I was working for a company, and as a part of that company, I was using a C++ framework called as VTK for my work. And while using that, I felt there are some things that could have been better, while using VTK. So I wrote a software tool called VTK Designer, put it on my own personal website because I like to use it, right? So that's what I mean by if something calls you, do it. Put the least minimum viable product out there in the world. I had no intention at that point that I'm going to start a company. I had no intention at that point that I'm going to build a team. I had none of these intentions. It's the least minimum viable project, put it out there. And then enjoy this thing like, people write thank you mails and, people will send criticisms, they'll write feedback, they'll say, I want to be a part of this project, I hate this project, whatever. And then it happens. And then what will also sometimes happen, it's a chance encounter, is in my case, the textbook in which I learned VTK, right? There was, back then you would get these fat books from which you would learn different things. Now you have a lot of online resources. This is 2002, 3. And the textbook from which I learned VTK, a new edition of the textbook came out and I religiously bought it. And on the page just before the third chapter, there was a big screenshot of my software. I looked at that and I was shouting, yelling in joy, and my parents, everybody got super scared. And I'm shouting and I'm crying, and that's when I realized that the little thing that I put out there has meant far beyond what I understood it to be. Right? So you hit that point, and then I want to, kind of ride on that sucker a little bit, see how much I can milk out of it. So I write a mail to these people, I write, thank you, I bought this. And then the authors send me a mail saying, oh, why did you buy it? We would be glad to send you a free copy. I said, free copy is fine, but now send me references. Right? So, and then network builds, and then people come and they say, okay, can you build? We have a similar software requirement. And then I start doing some freelancing work, and then I quit my job and I do more freelancing work. And then I find out that I'm doing enough freelancing work. I can have one more person to do freelancing with me. So I kind of put them together. And then it's a, my accountant says, hey, service tax, this is tax, this, oh, it's better to have a company. And then you start a company, and then you get more people. And then 20 people come into the company, and we're doing projects all over the world. And it's a great time. And at which point, this is where, Ratnesh keeps telling about you start out of passion, but then you have to allow the passion to disappear also, right? You can't hold on too tight to the passion. So it happened that a few years later, about 10 years later, I figured that, hey, I really enjoy writing software. What I don't enjoy is, the running of a company. And then I said, okay, I'm going to be true to what really matters to me. And I said, I'm not going to do these, company business anymore. So I kind of threw it all out, and I went back into doing individual consulting. I take up projects for about 2-3 months a year. Rest of the time, I mostly do hobby projects. I learn different things. I sleep. I watch a lot of movies or whatever. And I'm open to new experiences, new learnings, and all of that along. So start something small, put the least minimum viable product out there, and watch as other people react and resonate with it. And I think that kind of creates a chain reaction of events, which will lead you into interesting. So you can't game this. You can't plan all of this ahead. So you can plan limited things. You can have a reasonable amount of goals and all of that, but then don't be too tight about 5-year goal, 10-year goal, and all of it. That's at least my perspective.
So what I'm getting a lot out of your conversation is that, hey, if you're open to, I put it also, open to ideas, open to options, and open to opportunities. That's like let's still, and then you keep doing, as you said,
Yes.
keep doing and putting it out there.
Yes.
And then this out there is catching me, not
Yes.
just doing, but you put it out there, do some
Yes.
value for the people around, and then you keep growing out of it. I think if somebody asks me what's the curriculum of Coversity, I will say this is the curriculum, what you
Yes.
just said. I'll say watch Prashant's live, you will get the curriculum. Because if you just do and put it out there, and keep observing and keep adding value and keep listening to your passions, that's it. That's the curriculum of life in a way.
Absolutely. That's what really caught me about Aarohi when I first visited. I think when I visited 2016, early 2016, it was one of the kids, or maybe it was one of the parents, who said the spelling of Aarohi is Doing. And that really caught me about Aarohi. And there's a lot of doing there. There's no funda. There's no theory. There's no philosophizing. We are part of the WhatsApp groups in Aarohi, and I notice a lot of philosophizing going on about various things. And for me, that's too much of mumbo jumbo. Get on the field, man. Start playing. I mean, get duck out 100 times. That's okay, but play.
Yeah.
Just keep playing. The conversations you'll have as a player is very distinct from the conversations you'll have, sitting in the stands and watching the game, or the conversations you'll have when you're trying to comment about the players who are playing the game. Those conversations are different. Get into the field, play. The conversations you'll have with the other players is very different. Keep doing stuff.
Yeah, like this play your game. I mean, Srijini to me is like the perfect example. She's all the time playing her game.
Yep.
She wanted some exposure. She wanted to be part of Coversity formation team. She hasn't even joined Coversity, and she wants to be part of them. And she said, "I want to play this game." And here she is. She's part of the team for 7-8 months. There in all, as you said, there in all meetups, all lives, everywhere with a smile. and it's amazing. So
But her
this
formal Coversity journey starts, I think, this month, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
this month
Yeah,
when Coversity starts on 26
yeah,
June. So
yeah.
with other youth. So that's, I would say, the formal journey has started. The informal
Yes,
starts now.
informal starts now. You know,
But
there's another school in there's another learning center in I think Berlin. It's called Weekwill. It started by a 12-year-old, I think. They have a very similar approach. You know that just start something and then figure backwards. Uh,
yeah. I think when people, Prashant, think about passion, they think it should be, like how, let's say, A.R. Rahman is passionate about music. You have to be like big, like somebody like A.R. Rahman. I'm just taking whatever name is coming. But I think how you have put passion in, you can talk a little more about is it's not about something really big and all, but it's about maybe what is igniting you right now.
yes, absolutely. I would. Uh, okay, so disclaimer, right? These are just personal thoughts. I am not A.R. Rahman. I am not Rajamouli. Uh, and uh, passion for me is uh, very much what, okay, so if I want to say what is the meaning of passion for me, I would say passion is something that drives my juices right now, right? Simple as that. It doesn't have to be big. It really doesn't have to be big. Uh, Previously, when my son went to carpentry for the first time, for him, carpentry was everything. He would come and say, "This is the day my future is beginning." He would give me all these grand ideas, and being the what do you call being the robotic parent that I was, when a child says something like, "Oh, I'm so passionate about this," I imagine him being a 35-year-old stud carpenter, right? And the journey of that starts now. That's how it began. That's the imagination, right? He was all up about carpentry for all of like 18 months, and there is no carpentry anymore, right? Should I therefore discard the notion that he was passionate about it? And I spent a lot of time being really confused about that idea, because I noticed, and in the Discord channels as well, there would be a lot of other parents who would ask about the same thing, saying, my daughter says I'm passionate about this, and then it happens, and then it fizzles out, and then it fizzles out, and then it fizzles out. I think children have far better understanding of passion than we do. Uh, if we hold on to the passion very tight, eventually we torture ourselves. Is, I think, my understanding. We have to allow. So I'm so clear that I don't want to be doing software development all 12 months in a year. Because if I do that, I'll be a terrible programmer, terrible one, right? So I want to do it. It's like, oh, sleep is great, but do I want to sleep 24 hours a day? Workout is great, but do I want to be working out 24 hours a day? No, you have to make space for other things too. So passion is whatever drives my juices right now, whatever wants, whatever excites me to wake up in the morning to go do something about. And over a period of time, what passion does is it provides a context through which we end up seeing everything around us, right? It's like if hammer is my passion, everything is a nail, right? So a passion kind of gives that context. It provides the color and the lighting and the environment through which we end up seeing the entire environment. And we begin to relish the worldview and the opportunity and the possibilities and experience and everything that life seems to offer when we are passionate about something. It's that emotional experience that will keep the passion alive. Now, what really happens is this. Let's say I am passionate about, let's say, screenwriting. Let's say I'm passionate about screenwriting. And I say I'm very passionate about it. I start writing screenplays, I start reading screenplays, I write books, I read books about screenplays, and I watch movies, and I have discussions about how its writing is done, etc., etc., etc. I'm totally having a wonderful time, right? And 3 years later, I suddenly switch my metrics, my measurement of how much I'm enjoying this, from the act of enjoying screenplay itself to how much money I'm going to make out of it. In that instant, I destroy the passion. Now that isn't to say that I shouldn't have an expectation of money. No. Uh, what I mean to say is that's not passion. It's fine to make money. Please, I think we should make money. We should create workability. We all have stomachs to fill, families to feed, whatever. But the instant we make it about money, now, okay, for a moment, let's keep money aside. For a lot of us, suddenly it will become about fame,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
awards. I'm very passionate about software development. But the moment I hear that a friend of mine who doesn't really care about software development earns more money than I do, in that instance, my passion is gone. वो थोड़ी ना passion बना. It's like I love my wife a lot, but suddenly I see another woman and my whole love for my wife disappears. That's not love, right? You shouldn't have a reason to be passionate about something. There shouldn't be money as an excuse to be passionate about it. There shouldn't be fame as an excuse to be passionate about it. You are passionate about it simply because every cell in your body wants you to be passionate about it, and that's the full stop of it. Right? Now, in the backdrop of that, whatever money comes. Whatever fame comes. Whatever other metrics comes. Now, if money is important, then I should stop saying that I'm passionate about software development, and I should be authentic about saying I'm passionate about money. And there's nothing wrong about being passionate about money. Be passionate about money. So if you're passionate about money, then it wouldn't matter if you're getting it from selling tomatoes or selling iPhones or making some innovation. It doesn't matter. So what happens, I think, with passion is we start out with a very authentic statement of I'm passionate about X, and over a period of time we reduce that to an inauthentic expression of I'm passionate about X because, and then add money or fame or something else to it. I think that's where the mischief is. So we should just let passion be passion. And if we just let passion be passion, it may sustain, it may not sustain, and if it sustains, it will not bother you. If it doesn't sustain, also it will not bother you.
Yeah, I think a lot of us need to, Prashant, think about this because I see that as a concern with a lot of parents that, okay, he is passionate or she's passionate, but then she switches and kind of that is more worrisome. But I keep telling them, forget that they changed the passion. See what it did to them when they were there with it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, a whole new perspective of the world is there as long as you have, that passion. And I think relish it, yeah. Fully enjoy the taste of it. If it was, if it's going to last for 6 months, then relish it for 6 months.
Yeah, one
Okay.
thought
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Kritika.
We were talking about a passion being, unfiltered and, being passion really. And then the aspect of making money, which is equally important, right?
Right.
But for a youth who's kind of starting off, thinking about their aspirations and really passionate in that moment, but somewhere there's also a parent who's equally worried, let's say, about the whole financial security aspect.
Sure.
So how, like, what what do you have to say about situations like this, which is very prevalent across, like as children are starting out, they're passionate and all those things, but there's also a concern that they keep switching, which could be the case. And then how are they going to make money? What if they fail? All these things come up. So how do we navigate such situations? If you want to share some thoughts around those.
Okay, so let me be very honest. While I said whatever I said, as a parent, I am also bothered by is my son's current passions going to feed him, right? Uh, and I keep confronting that question a lot of times. And my therapy is the parents of Aarohi channel in Discord, right? So knowing that if all the other parents have the same, thought process, and I can calm down and say, okay, I'm not a weirdo for having this concern. So if I think money as a way of following uh, your passion, but there isn't any. So we can't put a math on how much money will follow, right? There, some money will. So if you're passionate about something, see, it's like that. This ikigai, right? Know what you're passionate about, what the world wants, and what people are willing to pay you for. So if you can figure out something in the intersection, if you find something that you're passionate about, that the world wants, and they're willing to pay you for, that's your ikigai, right? So if you can, over a period of time, sample different things and arrive at that spot, for sure money will follow. Maybe the amount of money that will follow isn't as much as your friend. Maybe the amount of money that follows isn't as much as these uber happy Instagram folks, but it will follow. If I continue to orient my energies around relishing everything that comes out of that ikigai, I think the quantum of money that I make will not bother me, and I will end up organizing my lifestyle around making my life work with the money I get. But the moment my focus goes on, hey, I'm making this, but I should be actually making 20 times this or 500 times this. See, that's when we lose our eye on the target. If you look at a lot of great stories, a lot of great actors, a lot of great entrepreneurs, I don't think they went about saying, I'm going to make this much money. They went about saying, okay, I'm going to solve this problem and see what comes along with it. And along with it comes money. And whatever money came, and there are people who have lost a lot of money too. And they don't seem to be too bothered by it as well. There's so many stories, just on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of people sharing, my third startup failed, right? My fifth startup failed. So it's like 5 series of failed startups. And they'll come back and they'll do something else. I want to share a story. We were running Teriflex, and one of my first customers, I don't want to take his name because I haven't told him that I will tell the story. So one of the first customers who came to our, so Teriflex was this mini theater, 13 seats, and filmmakers would book this theater and do private shows of their up and coming films to distributors, to business executives, to celebrities, in order to promote their film, sell their film, sell the remake rights or whatever. So in that process, I would end up meeting a lot of filmmakers, producers, directors, etc. So there was this very young filmmaker who had made a film, and he was showcasing his films to to quite a few distributors in order to get the film distributed in the cinema theaters and announce a theatrical release. He had spent about 1.5 crores to make the film. And that 1.5 crores didn't come easy because he's working in an IT company. It's his savings and some of his friends' savings, and he has sold some of his assets in order to raise money for it. So it's hard put together 1.5 crores. And the film was released